We're going to be talking about early animal evolution, specifically how life in the oceans eventually, made its way onto land.
Right. It's an incredible story of adaptation, survival, innovation. The source material we're using is so fun. It compares early animal evolution to a reality show, almost like Survivor, but with incredibly high stakes, obviously.
Right. And we're specifically looking at, the period after this massive ice age when the Earth was starting to thaw out. So imagine a world, right, where resources are scarce, competition is fierce.
Yeah, absolutely.
And only the most innovative, the toughest life forms are going to make it.
Talk about pressure.
I know. So our first stop on this prehistoric adventure is the Cambrian period. And the book describes this era as like a fashion show of bizarre proportions.
Oh, yeah.
With these creatures called Trilobites, right? They had these crazy, like, full-body armor. And multiple eyes.
It was wild.
Yeah.
And they weren't just fashionable, they were incredibly successful. Trilobites were like the Swiss Army knives of evolution. I mean, that flexible armor, like you said, provided protection. The multiple eyes gave them incredible vision. And they had a reverse diet, meaning they could adapt to various food sources. It's no wonder they dominated the seafloor for millions of years.
And what's amazing is that we can still find their fossils today.
Right.
It's true. It's incredible to think that we can hold something in our hands, like a fossil, that's over 500 million years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it really gives you a sense of,
deep time.
the vastness of time.
Keep time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
It does. And it makes you realize that the Cambrian explosion, like any good reality show, couldn't last forever.
Yeah.
The Ordovician period brought new challenges, new players to the game.
That brings us to kind of the underdog in our story. And these weren't like the flashy trilobites, but small, unassuming, almost like worm-like creatures that had this simple structure called a notochord.
Oh, the notochord, it was a game changer. This flexible rod that ran along their back. And it was, the precursor to the backbone. This simple structure gave them greater mobility, agility, which in a world of giant sea scorpions was a huge advantage.
So it's like they went from a brick phone to a smartphone. Suddenly they can do so much more.
Exactly. And while they may not have been the most glamorous creatures, these early vertebrates, they were pioneers.
Yeah.
That simple notochord paved the way for the evolution of all vertebrates, including us.
That's crazy. I mean, mind-blowing when you think about it. But as we move into the Silurian period, things are about to get a lot more intense, right?
Oh, yeah?
Now we've got giant sea scorpions entering the picture.
Yes, and these weren't your average backyard scorpions. We're talking about creatures that could grow up to 10 feet long.
I know. It was a true arms race as, fish had to evolve rapidly to survive.
Yeah, they did.
The book describes it as a prehistoric battle royale.
It really was.
The fish really had to, step up their game in terms of defense and agility.
And they did. That pressure from those giant sea scorpions led to such incredible adaptations in fish. We see the emergence of backbones, jaws, and even more developed brains. This was a pivotal moment in their evolution.
So it was like they were leveling up because of all this competition, these giant predators.
Absolutely.
But all this action was happening underwater. What about life on land? Was anything happening there yet?
Well, before the fish could make their move onto land, the stage had to be set. And the unlikely hero in this part of the story is algae.
Algae? You mean those slimy green things you find in ponds?
The very same.
Okay.
As simple as they may seem, algae played a crucial role in preparing the land for plant life. As algae crept onto the shores, they decayed, they enriched the soil,
right,
creating a fertile environment for the first land plants to take root.
So algae was like the advanced team,
Exactly.
Getting things ready.
Setting the stage.
Yeah.
Precisely. And as plants colonized the land, they created new habitats, food sources, attracting another group of pioneers, insects.
Okay, so we've got plants and insects on land. That's starting to look like a real ecosystem, right?
It is.
But what about those fish? When do they finally make their move?
That's where we're headed next. The Devonian period, also known as the Age of Fishes, saw an explosion of diversity in the fish world. But, with this abundance of life came a new challenge.
Oh, no.
Overcrowding.
Right.
The oceans were getting a bit too cozy for comfort.
So it's like they had rush hour, but underwater.
Exactly.
I can see why some fish might start looking for a new place to live.
And that's exactly what happened. The search for resources in space pushed some adventurous fish towards the land. And that brings us to one of the most remarkable transitions in evolutionary history.
Yeah.
The move from fins to feet.
But, transitioning from, swimming to walking.
It's a huge change,
Oh,
a monumental shift, and it required some truly groundbreaking adaptations. Our source material focuses on this creature called Ichthyostega, which is considered one of the earliest amphibians. It's fascinating, to think that we can trace our own lineage back to these, fish with legs.
That's mind-boggling. The book describes Ichthyostega as like a fish out of water, literally, and paints a pretty humorous picture of this creature kind of, clumsily navigating this new gravity-filled world. It makes you wonder, what that first step onto land must have felt like.
I know, right?
For these creatures.
It must have been a strange experience.
So weird.
Challenging. But, beneath the awkwardness, something truly remarkable was happening. Ichthyostega wasn't just, flopping around.
Right.
It was showcasing the incredible power of evolution to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
So what exactly enabled these fish to make the transition to land? Was it just a matter of, developing stronger fins that could support their weight?
That was a crucial part of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Over millions of years, the fins of certain fish evolved into limbs strong enough to, propel them across land. But there's another key adaptation we can't overlook.
Okay.
Lungs.
Lungs. So they went from breathing underwater to breathing air. That seems like a giant leap, even for evolution.
It was a gradual process, of course. The book explains that some fish developed these pouches in their digestive tracts that could absorb oxygen from the air.
Wow.
Over time, these pouches evolved into more complex structures, that we know as lungs. And remember those early land plants we talked about? Yeah.
They were pumping out oxygen, creating an atmosphere that could support air-breathing animals.
So it sounds like everything was falling into place. The land was ready, the atmosphere was primed, and these fish were evolving the tools they needed to survive on land.
It's like a perfect recipe.
Right.
Exactly. It's a beautiful illustration of how life adapts to its environment.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that this new terrestrial world presented a whole new set of challenges.
No, I bet. No more effortless floating. Suddenly, they've got gravity pulling them down.
Right.
Predators lurking in the shadows. The sun beating down relentlessly.
All new problems to solve.
It's like going from a relaxing vacation back to, the daily grind.
That's a good way to put it.
So what kinds of adaptations allowed these amphibians to, survive these harsh conditions?
Well, to prevent water loss, they developed tougher skin.
Okay.
That acted as a barrier.
Like armor.
Yeah. Their limbs became even stronger, allowing them to move more efficiently on land, both for hunting and escaping predators.
Right. They also had to develop new ways to regulate their body temperature since they couldn't rely on the constant temperature of the water anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
So they were becoming true land warriors.
Adapting to the new world.
But if I remember correctly, amphibians still have a strong connection to water, right?
Absolutely. They needed to return to water to lay their eggs. Much like many amphibians do today.
Right.
Their lives were this delicate balancing act between these two worlds.
It's like those early explorers who ventured into a new land, but still relied on supplies from their homeland, right? They were pioneers, but not completely independent yet.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
So we've gone from fish to amphibians, and now we're on the verge of the reptilian revolution.
But before we dive into the world of reptiles, I think it's important to just take a moment to appreciate this incredible journey we've witnessed so far.
Yeah.
From those first tentative steps of Ichthyostega to the diverse array of amphibians, it's a testament to the power of evolution to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
It really is. It makes you realize that change, even when it's difficult and awkward even, can lead to amazing things.
Absolutely.
And the story of life on Earth is the ultimate example of that.
Well said. And as we'll see, the saga continues with the rise of the reptiles who took those early adaptations and ran with them, paving the way for the dinosaurs and eventually ourselves.
This is getting exciting. I can't wait to see what evolutionary marvels await us in the next chapter. So stay tuned, deep divers.